Welcome to EduCasts, home of EduCasters. There is a specific, heavy texture to the silence in a classroom that isn't working. It's not the electric hush of 30 people holding their breath while a chemistry experiment changes color. It's a flat, stale silence. It's the sound of air conditioning humming over 25 teenagers who have essentially put their brains into screensaver mode. For a long time, we treated this silence as good behavior. We treated the student sitting still, eyes forward, pencil poised, as the ideal learner. We built an entire educational infrastructure around the delivery model. The idea that knowledge is a physical object that a teacher possesses and can hand over to a student, like passing a baton in a relay race. If the teacher speaks clearly, transmits the signal, and the student is quiet, receives the signal, then learning must have happened. But any teacher who has graded a stack of quizzes on Friday knows that this model is a lie. You can explain the causes of the French Revolution with perfect clarity, with passion, with sleek slide decks, and on Friday, half the class will look at you like they'd never heard the name Robespierre before. The uncomfortable truth we have to face is that teaching and learning are not opposite sides of the same coin. They are totally different currencies. Teaching is what we do, learning is what they do. And the fundamental principle that governs this disconnect, the iron law of pedagogy, is that learning is an active process. It is not a spectator sport. It is not an osmosis event. Learning is a biological, metabolic, strenuous act of construction. It requires the learner to essentially rewire their own neural hardware. You cannot do it for them any more than you can go to the gym and lift weights for them. This is a deep dive into why this is true, not just philosophically, but biologically, and why shifting our classrooms from places of listening to places of doing is the single heaviest lift in modern education, but also the only one worth making. To understand why passive learning fails, we have to look under the hood. We have to look at the brain itself. The human brain is an efficiency machine. It makes up about 2% of your body weight, yet it consumes roughly 20% of your daily caloric energy. Evolutionarily, that is an expensive organ to run. Because it is so expensive, the brain is ruthlessly efficient at conserving energy. It is constantly looking for ways to idle. When a student sits in a lecture, listening to a teacher drone on, their brain is scanning the input. If the input is predictable, abstract, or not immediately relevant to survival or social standing, the brain filters it out. It says, "This isn't important enough to burn glucose on." The student might physically hear the words, the auditory cortex is firing, but the deep processing centers, the parts that weave new information into long-term memory, remain dark. Real learning is physical. It involves a process called long-term potentiation, LTP. When you learn something new, neurons in your brain fire together. If they fire together often enough and with enough intensity, the synaptic connection between them strengthens. Proteins are synthesized, new terminals grow. You are literally building a bridge between brain cells. This construction work doesn't happen when you are just watching. It happens when you are struggling. It happens when you try to recall a fact and can't quite find it. It happens when you try to explain a complex idea in your own words and stumble. That mental friction, that effort, is the signal to the brain that says, "Hey, this connection matters. Build it stronger." When we make learning too easy or too passive, we deny the brain the friction it needs to build those bridges. We create the illusion of competence. A student reads a chapter in a textbook. The words make sense as they flow past their eyes. They nod. They think, "I get this." But because they haven't actively wrestled with the material, generated it, questioned it, connected it to something else, no strong neural trace is formed. They have recognized the information, but they haven't learned it. We often use the metaphor that children are sponges soaking up information. It's a cute image, but it's dangerously misleading. A sponge is passive. It sits there, and water fills it up. A better metaphor is that the brain is a muscle. If you want a muscle to grow, you have to subject it to load. You have to stress it to the point of micro-failure so it repairs itself stronger. Learning is the same. It requires cognitive load. If the teacher is doing all the heavy lifting, organizing the content, synthesizing the main points, drawing the conclusions, then the teacher is the one getting the workout. The students are just watching the teacher exercise. If the biology is so clear that humans learn by doing, by manipulating, by questioning, why do our schools look the way they do? Why is the default setting still sit and get? We are living in the hangover of the Industrial Revolution. When public education was standardized in the 19th and early 20th centuries, the goal wasn't necessarily to create critical thinkers or independent problem solvers. The goal was to create a reliable workforce. We needed people who could follow instructions, sit still for long periods, handle repetitive tasks, and respect authority. The factory model of education, rows of desks, bells signaling shift changes, standardization of product, was incredibly efficient at producing that kind of citizen. It treated students like empty vessels to be filled with standardized content. In that model, passivity was a feature, not a bug. A quiet worker is a good worker. We also have to admit that passive learning is comfortable. It's comfortable for the teacher, and it's comfortable for the student. For the teacher, lecturing feels like working. You are performing. You are covering the material. You can control the pace. If you have a lot of content to get through, and American teachers are crushed under the weight of massive curricula, talking at the students feels like the most efficient way to get through it. For the student, passive learning is safe. If you are just listening, you can't be wrong. You don't have to risk social embarrassment by offering a weird idea. You don't have to experience the frustration of not knowing the answer. We have trained students to view school as a transaction. Tell me what's on the test. I will memorize it, I will bubble it in, and we can all go home. Active learning breaks that social contract. It demands vulnerability. It demands effort. When you ask a class to stop listening and start thinking, you often get pushback. Just tell us the answer, they say. They aren't being lazy. They are being economical. They are trying to save energy. They are trying to return to the comfortable stasis of the delivery model. This is where things get messy on the ground. When administrators or consultants come in and shout, "active learning," teachers often roll their eyes. They picture chaos. They picture glue sticks and glitter and kids running around the room. They picture fluff. We need to make a hard distinction here between behaviorally active and cognitively active. You can be moving your body without moving your mind. If a student is following a cookbook lab in biology, step 1, pour this. Step 2, stir this. They are using their hands. But if they aren't thinking about why the reaction is happening, they are cognitively passive. They are just following a recipe. Conversely, a student can be sitting stone still, staring at a wall, and be engaged in the most intense active learning of their life. If they are mentally debugging a line of code, or wrestling with a moral paradox in a novel, or trying to visualize a geometric rotation, their brain is lighting up like a Christmas tree. Active boils down to agency. Who is doing the sense-making? In a passive classroom, the teacher makes the meaning. The teacher says, "The theme of The Great Gatsby is the decay of the American dream." The student writes it down. In an active classroom, the teacher asks, "Why is Gatsby so obsessed with the green light?" And the student has to forge the connection themselves. The activity is the generation of the idea. It is the shift from consumer to producer. This aligns with the constructivist theory of learning, championed by giants like Jean Piaget and Lev Vygotsky. They argued that knowledge isn't something you get, it's something you build. Imagine knowledge is a house. In the passive model, the teacher builds a house and gives the student a photo of it. The student has a picture of a house, but they don't know how to build one. In the active model, the teacher gives the student the lumber, the hammer, and the blueprints, and says, "Build it." The student's house might be crooked at first. They might smash their thumb. But by the time they are done, they understand the structural integrity of the house in a way the student with the photo never will. One of the most counterintuitive findings in learning science is that making things easier for students often hurts their learning. Robert Bjork, a legendary psychologist at UCLA, coined the term desirable difficulties. His research shows that when learning feels fluent and easy, retention is often low. When learning feels slow, clunky, and difficult, retention is often high. This is a hard pill for compassionate teachers to swallow. We got into this business to help kids. We hate seeing them struggle. When we see a hand go up or a brow furrowed in confusion, our instinct is to rush over and smooth the path. We want to explain it again, simpler. We want to give a hint. But when we do that, we rob the student of the productive struggle. Think of it like spotting someone at the gym. If you grab the barbell and lift it for them every time they struggle, they aren't going to get stronger. You are just boosting their ego in the moment. The teacher's job in an active classroom is to be a very careful spotter. You have to let the weight press down on them. You have to let them shake a little. You only touch the bar when they are about to get crushed. Give up completely. This reframes confusion. In a traditional class, confusion is seen as a failure of teaching. I didn't explain it well enough. In an active class, confusion is often a sign of success. It's the feeling of the cognitive gears grinding into motion. We have to normalize that feeling for students. We have to say, "You're confused? Good. That means you're about to learn something." The classic lesson plan structure is I do, teacher models, we do, class practices, you do, independent practice. The problem is, we often spend 80% of the time on I do and we do. By the time we get to you do, the students are just copying the pattern the teacher laid out. They aren't thinking, they are mimicking. Active learning flips this. It's more like you try, you fail, we discuss, I clarify. Let the students hit the wall first. Let them realize they don't know how to solve the problem. That realization creates a knowledge gap, a curiosity itch that the teacher can then scratch with the lesson.